The Bronze Age gave Marvel some of its boldest, darkest, and most unforgettable heroes. Characters who defined the 1970s and early 80s with gritty storytelling and complex moral arcs. They headlined series, shaped major events, and built loyal fan bases. And then, they quietly disappeared. No dramatic endings, no epic send-offs, just cancelled runs, fading reprints, and long stretches out of print as newer eras took over. These weren't minor figures. They were Bronze Age icons Marvel slowly shelved. So which Bronze Age legends did Marvel quietly put out of print? Here are 10 icons left behind. At number 10 is Woodgod. Debuting in 1976's Marvel Premiere issue 31, Woodgod was a tragic, Frankenstein-like scientific creation who explored heavy themes of genetic engineering and prejudice. As a half-human, half-satyr outcast, he captured the Bronze Age's fascination with misunderstood monsters, starring in his own feature before making recurring appearances across the Incredible Hulk and Marvel team-up. Despite this undeniable historical footprint and his role in founding the Changeling Society, modern publishing has left his narrative completely stranded. There is absolutely no epic collection, zero standalone trades, and no omnibus preserving his classic tales. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from reprinting his stories boils down to thematic redundancy and brand focus. As Marvel successfully evolved the X-Men franchise into their premier allegory for genetic outcasts who are hated and feared, Woodgod's bizarre sci-fi satyr concept became completely unnecessary to their modern publishing ecosystem. Consequently, this fascinating Bronze Age tragic hero is a forgotten footnote today, leaving new readers completely unaware of his existence. At number 9 is the Golem. Debuting in 1974's Strange Tales issue 174, the Golem firmly anchored Marvel's mid-70s horror boom by bringing classic Jewish folklore into the superhero universe. Reanimated by the life force of a dying professor, this towering mute protector of the innocent headlined his own features in Strange Tales before crossing over into Marvel 2-in-1 for a memorable team-up with The Thing. Despite this strong Bronze Age footprint during Marvel's supernatural phase, modern publishing has completely abandoned his classic narrative. There is absolutely no epic collection, zero standalone trades, and no dedicated omnibus preserving his original solo tales. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from reprinting his stories boils down to genre collapse and absolute character redundancy. As the 1970s horror fad faded and mutants dominated, a slow, mute stone giant became structurally unnecessary when the Hulk and the Thing already occupied the tragic powerhouse niche. Consequently, the Golem remains a largely forgotten Bronze Age publishing relic today, leaving readers completely unaware. At number 8 is Jack of Hearts. Debuting in 1976's Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, issue 22, Jack of Hearts was a visually striking staple of late 70s and early 80s guest spots. He was the ultimate angsty, tragic cosmic hero, a ticking time bomb whose powers constantly threatened to overload and kill him. This led to sustained appearances across Iron Man, Marvel 2-in-1, and The Defenders, culminating in a 1983 to 1984 solo limited series. Despite this strong Bronze Age presence, his core arcs remain completely uncollected as a unified narrative, with zero epic collection or omnibus representation preserving his solo miniseries. Marvel quietly abandoned him as a solo prospect, largely because artists notoriously hated drawing his highly asymmetrical, complicated costume, and his tragic powerhouse niche was easily filled by higher-tier mutants. This lack of modern reprints forces fans to hunt down scattered back issues and reduces him to mere trivia. Today, modern readers only remember him for blowing up in Avengers Disassembled, disconnected from his Bronze Age origins. And now, the neglect gets even worse. From pulp adventurers to cosmic werewolves, Marvel's Bronze Age experiments weren't just forgotten, they were structurally written out of the reprint era. At number 7 is Skull the Slayer. Debuting in 1975, Jim Scully headlined an 8-issue solo run as Skull the Slayer before bleeding into Marvel 2-in-1. Capitalizing heavily on the 1970s pop culture obsession with the Bermuda Triangle and pulp adventures, he was an airplane pilot trapped in a dinosaur-infested dimension. Despite this prime Bronze Age real estate, his solo material has virtually never received premium modern preservation. He is completely skipped by the Epic Collection program, and no modern omnibus exists to chronicle his survival. Consequently, new readers have zero awareness of him today. He does not even appear in modern reading guides for Marvel's Mystic or Pulp sectors. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from reprinting his stories is simple. The lost-in-time genre completely evaporated from mainstream superhero comics. Furthermore, Khazar already occupied Marvel's distinct man-in-a-loincloth-fighting dinosaurs slot, rendering Skull completely redundant when market contraction hit, dooming his classic run to absolute and total publishing obscurity for modern audiences. At number 6 is Manwolf. Debuting his cosmic alter ego in 1973, before launching his solo run in 1974, John Jameson wasn't just a werewolf, he was a cosmic werewolf in a spacesuit who transitioned from a Spider-Man villain to the star god of an alien dimension. He headlined an 8-issue solo feature in Creatures on the Loose and Marvel Premiere, beautifully blending Marvel's horror and sci-fi lines. While he did receive a complete collection trade paperback back in 2019, his overarching narrative remains completely absent from the premium Epic Collection and Omnibus lines. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from preserving this era is that they required John Jameson to be a grounded supporting character in the Spider-Man mythos, usually acting as Ravencroft's security chief. Reprinting his era as an interdimensional god actively conflicts with the street-level tone Marvel prefers for him today. Consequently, he has been reduced entirely back to J. Jonah Jameson's astronaut son, leaving his epic cosmic Bronze Age adventures largely unread and ignored. At number 5 is Red Wolf. Debuting in September 1970's Avengers issue 80, Will Taltrees became Marvel's first major Native American superhero, representing a significant Bronze Age attempt to blend the fading Western genre with modern superhero continuity. He tested the waters in Marvel's spotlight before headlining a solo series of 9 issues, firmly establishing his early 1970s visibility. Despite this historical importance, his classic era has been entirely abandoned by modern publishing. There is absolutely zero omnibus coverage and zero Epic Collection representation for his run, leaving a gap where his 1972 series has never been properly collected in a modern trade format. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away is that the original run is heavily burdened by earnest yet dated cultural stereotypes and Western tropes. Rather than navigate the baggage of reprinting this material, Marvel simply ignores it. Consequently, the Will Taltrees era is entirely dead to modern fandom, remaining completely invisible even when later legacy characters occasionally pop up using the Red Wolf name. At number 4 is Ulysses Bloodstone. Debuting in 1975's Marvel Presents Issue 1, Ulysses Bloodstone was the ultimate immortal, rugged monster hunter fighting across centuries. He solidly anchored Marvel's mid-70s B-movie monster aesthetic, headlining multiple solo features across Marvel Presents and the back pages of the Rampaging Hulk magazine. Despite this undeniable Bronze Age importance, modern publishing has left his legacy completely stranded. There is absolutely no Epic Collection or modern omnibus preserving these tales. His core magazine backups and solo features remain largely uncollected, trapped in highly specialized out-of-print Marvel Universe trades. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from reprinting his stories is simple. His daughter, Elsa Bloodstone. Created in 2001, she perfectly captured the modern, snarky, Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque aesthetic the market demanded. Consequently, Marvel structurally shifted Ulysses from an active property into mere lore to bolster Elsa's backstory. Today, he is completely replaced in the minds of the fandom, leaving his classic Bronze Age adventures in total obscurity. The final stretch moves from sidelined monster hunters to pulp anti-heroes, jungle heroines, and street-level vigilantes. Characters completely erased by brand consolidation and redundancy. At number 3 is Dominic Fortune. Debuting in 1975 Marvel Preview 2, Dominic Fortune was Marvel's definitive 1930s pulp hero. Created by Howard Chaykin, he was a cynical, charismatic rogue who provided a grounded, historical counterweight to the cosmic superheroes of the Bronze Age. Fortune solidly anchored the era, starring in a series of standout solo backup features, primarily in the Hulk magazine, plus Marvel Premiere 56. Despite this undeniable prominence, modern publishing has left his legacy stranded. There is absolutely no epic collection or modern omnibus preserving these tales. Marvel released a single trade paperback in 2010 to collect Chaykin's run, creating a 16-year gap that leaves the material effectively dead to new readers. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away is simple. Pulp adventure heroes lost massive market share to mutants and gritty anti-heroes. Because his stories were largely set in the past, he did not integrate cleanly into the shared superhero universe, making his reprints a tough sell. Today, he is completely missing everywhere. At number 2 is Shanna the She-Devil. Debuting in 1972 alongside the Cat and Night Nurse, Shanna the She-Devil was introduced during Marvel's first major wave of female-led titles. Originally a fierce, independent protector of African reserves, she carried her own standalone narratives, headlining a 5-issue solo series. She followed this with heavy, recurring guest appearances in Daredevil, Kazar, and Marvel Team Up, easily clearing 15 Bronze Age appearances. Despite this early prominence, modern publishing has quietly erased her solo legacy. Her original series remains entirely absent from the accessible Epic Collection line, and she lacks any dedicated omnibus. Marvel last preserved her origins in a premium, expensive Marvel Masterworks hardcover years ago, creating a massive 13-year gap without mass-market trades. The structural reason Marvel moved away from reprinting her solo adventures is that they fully assimilated her into the Khazar and Savage Land IP. Consequently, modern readers only know her as Khazar's wife, effectively stripping away her solo agency and leaving her independent origins completely forgotten. At number 1 is the Shroud. Debuting in the pages of 1976's supervillain team-up issue 5, Maximilian Coleridge, the Shroud, was a fascinating, sightless Batman pastiche. He uniquely operated by masquerading as a criminal mastermind to destroy the underworld from within, solidly anchoring Marvel's 1970s street-level era. He cleared well over 15 Bronze Age appearances, starring in recurring arcs across Spider-Woman, Marvel Preview, and Marvel 2-in-1. Despite this undeniable historical footprint, modern publishing has left his overarching narrative completely stranded. There is absolutely no epic collection, 0 standalone trades, and no omnibus preserving his classic tales. The structural reason Marvel quietly moved away from reprinting his stories boils down to pure redundancy. As Marvel successfully developed Moon Knight and evolved Daredevil into a premier, grim and gritty street-level hero under Frank Miller, the Shroud simply became completely unnecessary to Marvel's modern publishing ecosystem. Consequently, this fascinating character is largely a forgotten footnote today, leaving new readers with no accessible way to discover or track his original Bronze Age adventures. Bronze Age legends deserve better than obscurity. Which icon should return to print next? Comment below and subscribe for more.